Jordan 1, a massive banger that has become completely mainstream, worn by everyone, even people who never cared about basketball or sneakers, and probably one of the most iconic sneaker pairs of all time. The Jordan 3, a pair that has always pleased sneakerheads, even though it was long overlooked by the general population in Europe. In recent years, this model has gained tremendous popularity, and in my opinion, the Jordan 3 has definitely changed a lot of people's minds. The Jordan 4, I guess we don't need to spell it out for you, is an ultra-iconic model in the sneaker game that has influenced a lot of people. The list of Jordans that have driven sneakerheads crazy is quite long, and one could almost believe that the Jordan brand has been flawless for the past 40 years. But that's without considering the lesser-known models of the brand that nobody ever talks about, like the Jordan 9 or Jordan 10 or even the Jordan 15 and 16, which are massive monstrosities. And yet, when we think of the most criticized and least respected pair of Jordans, surprisingly, we all think of the Jordan 2. Among the first 6 Jordans in terms of popularity, the Jordan 2 is light years behind all the others, and the results of the copper drop are clear. The Jordan 2 is not in demand, even with collaborations. However, you've probably noticed that Nike is doing everything possible to bring this model back into the limelight, and it makes you wonder if they're completely out of their minds or if they have once again planned a strategy that will succeed in making us love the Jordan 2. For now, it's far from being a done deal, and this model is far from reaching the top of the Jordan tier list, but I think we should still ask ourselves why everyone hates the Jordan 2. And most importantly, does this model really have the potential to make a comeback?
I'm Michael Jordan. McDonald's restaurants have given me this time to talk to you about something we both really care about.
In today's video, we're going to talk about a rather peculiar pair that happens to be both the pair that everyone's got on their radars and the pair that nobody pays attention to at the same time, the Jordan 2. For those who follow sneaker news, you've probably noticed that we're currently being bombarded with collaborations on this model. Every week we discover a new Jordan 2, even though initially, absolutely no one asked for it.
Leave me alone!
They really let everyone have a go at the Jordan 2. It's just the beginning, but we've already had a ton of collabs, whether it's from international stars like J Balvin, big players in the hype world like Off-White, hype boutiques from the States or the Philippines, and for European collabs, in France for example, we'll mostly remember the collaboration with Maison Chateau Rouge. But we've also had collabs with artists from other horizons like Nina Chanel Abney, who is a painter and not particularly known for her fashion to begin with. Just like you, I have absolutely no idea who this girl is. Power to her, but she really fucked up the pair.
What the hell?
Even if very few, or even if none of these collabs have been convincing for most of you, they at least have the merit of existing, but more importantly, they showcase new players in urban culture. Now, is that Nike's main objective? I'm not sure. They're still here for the money, and I imagine the project is for the Jordan 2 to become a model they can capitalize on enormously. Something like that has never really been the case, at least not as much as the other Jordans you love so much. To understand why, we'll have to take a leap into the past to provide some context on this poorly loved model. We're in 1996. The Jordan 1 was a huge success, much more than Nike could have imagined, and it was time to create a sequel to this flagship model of the swoosh brand. But more importantly, to transform Jordan into an entirely new range that had to differentiate itself from Nike. The Jordan 1 didn't have anything extraordinary compared to other models from the brand. It already resembled the Air Force, the Dunk, or even more so the Nike Dynasty or the Team Convention. The upcoming Jordan models needed to have their own identities. They needed to be recognized as Jordan pairs and not just another Nike model among many. To achieve this transition, they called upon Bruce Kilgore, the designer of the Air Force One, to accompany Peter Moore, who had already designed the Jordan 1. From the collaboration between these two prominent Nike designers, a first model was born but wasn't selected, and honestly, we can understand why. It was like a less refined Jordan 1. It clearly had no interest. However, later on, we were introduced to this new design that didn't resemble anything Nike was accustomed to. It was a luxury sneaker before the arrival of luxury sneakers. It was a pair that aimed to be both performance-oriented on the courts and perfectly wearable off the courts with sophisticated outfits. It had a shape vaguely inspired by dress shoes, snakeskin effects on the sides to evoke luxury, but above all, premium materials and Italian craftsmanship. During that long-gone era, you weren't considered stylish if you wore sneakers. Zanotti, Louboutin, or collaborations with Travis Scott and Off-White didn't exist yet. You absolutely needed leather shoes, Clarks, moccasins, and all of those kinds of things to be fresh. That's why the Jordan 2 aimed to be a kind of hybrid, part basketball shoe, part moccasin, and even if you don't necessarily see it when you look at the pair, when you delve into Nike's shameful archives, you can see this Jordan 2 remake imagined for sailing.
Hold on, cause they got the goddamn
In my solitude.
Even though this concept doesn't particularly excite us in 2023, back then they really gave it their all to make this project a banger, and naturally it came at a cost. While the Jordan 1 initially cost $65, its much more premium version cost over $100, which may seem like a completely ordinary or even cheap price today, but it was quite a hefty sum for that time.
Man, back in the day they were cheaper.
In 1986, the Jordan 2 was officially available for sale towards the end of the year, shortly before Christmas, and contrary to what many people might think, the pair was far from being a flop. In terms of sales, it had absolutely nothing to envy to the Jordan 1, despite its nearly twice as high price and its completely unexpected and innovative design. However, at that very moment, the relationship between Michael Jordan and Nike was starting to deteriorate, and Phil Knight, the head of Nike, was even convinced that Michael Jordan would terminate his contract with the sportswear company and leave the ship after injuring himself with the Jordan 1 and then having to end up playing in those bricks called the Jordan 2s. Nike doubted Jordan at the time, even though his performances on the basketball court were clearly outstanding and he was one of the most beloved athletes in the States. The fact that he didn't seem to enjoy being with Nike made the situation far from conducive to investing heavily in marketing for this model, which was the very first true Jordan model without the swoosh. Let's not pretend otherwise, this pair is quite ugly, and in reality it should be seen more as a transitional pair, since it was largely responsible for what the Jordan brand became afterwards, and it especially paved the way for the creation of the Jordan 3, which borrowed almost all of its lines from the Jordan 2. While the Jordan 1 and Jordan 2 were simply two completely different pairs that were seen more as a drastic change for the Jordan brand, the Jordan 3, designed by Tinker Hatfield, heavily relied on the work of its predecessors and was truly seen as the evolution of the previous model. And just like the iPhone 7 eventually becoming outdated when the 8 appeared, the Jordan 3 clearly overshadowed the Jordan 2, being more or less the same pair, but much better in every aspect, and it actually became the first pair of Jordans that Michael Jordan truly appreciated. The Jordan 2 was, therefore, a much more expensive model than the first one, completely different from what Nike had previously offered. To make matters worse, it arrived during a rather delicate situation between Nike and Michael Jordan, but most importantly, the appearance of the Jordan 3 about a year later ended up overshadowing this model, which is still today seen as an inferior and more expensive version of the Jordan 3.
This is bad. This is very bad.
But precisely today, Nike woke up one morning and thought that this model had the potential to make a comeback and eventually become the favorite pair of hypebeasts. If they're putting so much energy into it, it certainly means they must have indicators that lead them to believe that this pair has true potential. Personally, I'll take a stand on this one. I'm quite categorical about it. I don't see the Jordan 2 High ever becoming as hype as, for example, the Dunks did. It will always live in the shadow of the Jordan 3. It's the same pair, but much less refined. And just look at the stats of a Jordan 3 à ma manière compared to the Jordan 2 à ma manière, for example. There is absolutely no debate, and I'm 100% sure that with similar colorways, a Jordan 2 will never achieve the same consensus as a Jordan 3. On the other hand, the low version seems much more relevant to me already, and clearly the best executed Jordan 2 for me so far is the collaboration with Off-White. They made the very wise choice of going back to an OG shape and adding meaningful details to fill the void of the pair. This collaboration shows us that deep down, the Jordan 2 is not entirely trash. The initial design may seem a bit empty, but by allowing designers with a good vision to add their own touch, playing with materials, adding details, or even reworking the shape, there's potential to come up with a few bangers that are worth checking out, even though it's a very complicated pair with wide panels that doesn't allow for as much color blocking as the Jordan 1 or Dunks. Well, even though the low version is clearly better than the high, I don't see it reaching the level of hype of other more popular Jordans. But in reality, I don't think that's the intended goal either. For Nike, it's always another retro Jordan to sell you, diversifying the drops and not killing the hype of other models, but also make you happy by not occasionally taking an L on a Jordan. And surprisingly, people buy the Jordan 2s, even at $250.
Are you serious right now?
Well, the moral of the story is that the Jordan 2 still deserves a bit more respect. It's been the pillar of the evolution of the Jordan brand, even if the design is far from exceptional, let's not lie. We don't have too many worries about the pair. We probably won't see it as much as the Dunks, since it still retails for over $200. We're also unlikely to see certain reversals like we did with the Adidas Forum. But the propaganda will definitely work on a certain scale, and Nike will once again succeed in flipping your mind.
Drop, dip, hop, skip, shoot, tired of all these niggas thinking we crew, tired of all these bitches thinking we cool. I love hitting ATM with the drop, dip, hop, skip, shoot, tired of all these niggas thinking we crew, tired of all these bitches thinking we cool. Just only thing cool is a whip and the juice.